Okay, so we're going to go over fractions, ratios, and decimals. So they've given you this question here. Now, what is this? Is this a fraction, a ratio, or a decimal?
This is a fraction.
Yeah. Can it be written as a ratio?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Can.
And what about as a decimal?
Yes, it can. If you can calculate, I guess, the percent, and then you can convert that into decimal.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. In fact, now, what does this line mean in a fraction in between the two numbers? Do you know?
It separates the numerator and the denominator.
Okay. It's also an operation in math.
I think it's division.
That's right. It's division. Okay. That's what it means. It's just a nicer way of writing it instead of like that. It's a lot easier for us to work with numbers when they're written like that because sometimes numbers that are divided with each other aren't very nice to look at. You get very long decimals, so we write them as fractions, okay? So in this question, they've asked us to write each as a terminating decimal. So we have to write it as a decimal. So what this question reads, it says the first number, which is 53, so think of it like we're reading top to bottom. 53 divided by 64, okay? Now that can be confusing, but what that means is the 53 is going to go under our long division sign. So that's 53 divided by, okay, and then 64, exactly. So that's the first thing we got to get used to writing. So I'm going to highlight those two so you kind of have a feel. The 53 would always go underneath, okay, and the 64 would be like this. So in high school math, a lot of time what they'll do is they'll use letters to represent numbers. So I'm going to try to get you used to that idea.
Like algebraic expression.
Yeah, exactly. Now, oops, I don't want that to happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write for you almost like a formula, okay? And a lot of times in high school math, they talk about formulas. So this is what you're going to have to eventually get used to. So this way I've written this, I'm going to use a letter to represent, it's called the numerator, okay? So we'll put the numerator as an n divided by the denominator. And we'll use a d to represent that, okay? So if I wanted to turn a fraction into a long division question, I'd write it like this. We still have our long division sign, but the numerator goes underneath, all right? So we use n to represent that, and the denominator goes on the outside. So that's a way for us to help remember it, okay? So that's a little formula you could always keep with you. All right, so when we go to actually divide this, does 64 go into 53?
Well, not as a whole number.
Not as a whole number. So what do we have to do next?
So, I think you can, since 64 times 1 is equal to 64, you'd have to write 0.
That's right.
Which would be 0. And you'd write 0 under.
Okay.
Then you'd subtract.
That's right. I'm going to zoom in to do this. There we go. That's right. So 0 times 64, right? That's exactly what you did. And then we did what? We're going to have to do subtraction.
You subtract.
Okay, what do we get?
53.
Good.
And then you'd bring down another 0. So that means it's a decimal now.
Ah, good. So we have to include this decimal here.
Yeah.
So if I put a decimal here, do I have to include it in my answer? Yeah.
Yes.
It has to go on both the bottom and the top, right? And then we can add. How many zeros am I allowed to add throughout this question?
Well, there's no limit.
There is no limit because these zeros after a decimal are what we call, they don't really mean anything, right? Exactly. So I could just keep including zeros. It's still the number 53. It doesn't change anything, right? So we'll add a couple here and see where we go with this question. We'll add this a little longer. Okay, so we bring down our 0. What number are we working with now?
530.
That's right. The 64 going to that?
Yep.
Now we got to figure out how many times, though. So with long division, sometimes we might end up repeating parts of our multiplication. So what I like to do is I actually use what I call like a side calculation. There we go. I put a little line on the side, and I do all my multiplying, because we know we're going to be working with multiplying, right? I take all my multiplying.
Oh, it's 8.
Oh, you already know it? Okay.
512.
Good. Oh, good for you. Oops. Have you already done that one, or you do it in your head?
Yeah, because powers of 2.
Okay. Good, good, good. So we did 8 by 4. What would that give us?
32.
Okay.
And then you carry the 3.
And then what does that give us?
27. Sorry, 8 times 6 is 48.
Yeah.
Plus 3 is 51.
Good. Excellent. I always keep these there because sometimes we might run into a question where 512 or 512 ends up being the next one for a different number. So I always write them here so I don't forget them. Good. So we put it in 8 times, which gives us 512.
Which would be 18.
Oh, yeah. Going through this. Okay, what next?
Then you bring down the 0 again.
Yep.
And 64 into 180 is... yeah, it'll be 2.
It's 2. Why not 3?
Because 64 times 3 would be 192.
That's good. Here's a quick way of estimating that, okay? What if I had the number 60 instead of 64? How many times does 60 go into 180?
3.
3,
64
exactly.
would be automatically be.
Yeah, it's obviously too big, right?
Yeah.
So then we know we have to use 2. Good. Excellent. You picked that up fast. So what was 64 by 2?
128.
Yeah. Okay, so we put it in our 128 here.
Which would be 152. I mean 52, sorry. 52.
When we subtract, yep, that's right. It's 52. Okay, and now what do?
Bring down the 0.
Bring down the 0. Now, it's a good thing we kept our...
Extra zeros.
Yeah, our extra zeros. Plus, it kept our calculation. Why? What do we think is going to be the next number on this list?
The next number would obviously be 64 times 8 is 500.
Yeah, because 512 looks like it's going to be closest to that again, right? So we can instantly go. That's why we always keep our multiplication on the side, okay? So good. We know that 8's going to be the next one. So 512. We subtract that. What do we get?
8.
8. All
You
right.
bring down the 0 again.
Yeah, we're going to have to zoom out a little to get this whole question. It's a big one. Okay. Bring down the next 0. What do we got?
80.
64 going to that?
Yes.
That's an
once,
easy one. Good.
Which is 16.
Okay. 64 gives us 16. This one's going to go for a while. Bring down the next 0.
64 into 160. If you do 60. Yeah. No, it's speed 2.
2 again, right? 128 is probably going to
Yeah.
be the closest to that. Good. See, all those multiplication we did earlier is coming in very handy right now, right? So we get 128. What are we going to get?
160. 132. I mean 32, sorry.
32. Okay, so we have the process, and it looks like we pretty much know what we're doing. I'm going to quickly check to see if this is a terminating decimal.
Yes,
This-
it is. 64 times 5 is 300.
Oh, does it work perfectly? Great. All right, so 64 by 5.
Is 320.
Very good. There you go. Finally got to the end. That's a very long one. Good. If you're confused to see if you made a mistake, do you know what device you could use to help check?
Well, I guess you can multiply 64 by 0.828125. And if you get 53, then you're correct.
We could always do this also. A calculator, we don't want to replace what we're practicing with it, but it's definitely a good device to help us check things, right? So we can actually check that question. What was 53 divided by 64? Terminate 828,125. Perfect.
Yeah.
Worked out great. Awesome.
So.
Okay, so that's the first one.